Welcome back, everybody, to another American prison horror story episode of Lockdown 23 in 1. That's right, an American prison horror story it is. I've heard a lot of them on this channel, but this one, man, it's definitely on the top 3. And believe it or not, when I read this story at the end, it gave me a twist of Home Alone vibes. Trust me, you have no idea what I'm talking about until I read it. But the situation I'm be speaking on is actually kind of old, from 2021, but everything's said and done now. He's been sentenced and there's plenty more details on the situation, so let's get right into it. If you enjoy all things lockup and crime related, then this is where you want to be. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell before you leave, and check out my beautifully assorted playlist with many more videos for you to start watching today. Now, before I get into the story, let me clarify something, alright? A lot of people think that I bring these stories to try to scare them. Well, you're absolutely correct. That's exactly what I'm trying to do here. Prison is the most treacherous place I've ever seen in my life. Even when you think you're doing alright and no one really cares about you, man, you always gotta look behind your back. You don't know what's coming your way. That day could be the day that you die. Why? Who knows? Someone doesn't like the way you look or want something that you got. Not to mention something even more terrifying than them all, and I didn't really realize it until after the fact. The story today is really going to put it into perspective, but getting a new cellmate, especially in these prisons that are designed for violent offenders, only certain kind of offenders get past a certain level, right? So you see this guy come through the gate, but you're not thinking none of that. You're thinking it's going to be like the last 4 or 5 cellmates you had from jail all the way to now in prison, but you just don't know. Can you trust that individual enough to close your eyes and slumber? I was lucky not to get a psychopath like the one from the story today. Now, with all that being said, hopefully this story scares you a little bit. Stop committing crimes while you can. Walk that straight and narrow, man. I'm trying to tell you, you don't want to be put in these types of situations. Alright, the article begins coming from Texas. An inmate at the Clements unit in Amarillo, hopefully I pronounced him right, was sentenced to life without parole for killing his cellmate by tying him up, strangling him, and stomping on his head. But trust me, like I said, it gave me Home Alone vibes. When I get into the details, you ain't gonna believe it. Cornelius Harper was found guilty for capital murder of the death of Silvino Nunez, his own cellmate. Listen to this. It says Harper staged and moved the body to deceive the correctional officers for at least 2 days. Why does he have to deceive the correctional officers? Probably because they're making their rounds. And he's in there moving a body around to make it look like dude's still alive for days. Just imagine if there was a camera in that cell. God, it'd be a terrifying scene. And they're going to get into more details, like I said. But it continues saying that he believed Nunez was a parasite and he was on a holy mission to purge those he saw as defective. Yes, anybody that's done time had a new cellmate. We're all lucky that we didn't get housed with an inmate like Cornelius Harper. He definitely would have looked at me as a parasite. Coming back with all the coffees and poker chips. He'd look at me with disgust, and as soon as the door closed, he says, "It's time for you to get cleansed." Man, shoot, I'd have to take him out first. Gotta know when to hold him and when to fold him, right? Nah, for real though, if someone said something like that to me while I was awake in the cell, it's go time. You're a fucking psychopath, man. In prison, see, one thing I realized is people, and if they start saying something psycho, chances are they're definitely psycho. Man, I've had so many cellmates that were like completely normal, and then out of nowhere, they open up a little bit more and, express their views on life. Man, they lost it. Completely out there. I thought my tin hat situations were good, but God, theirs blow mine out the water. But it continues saying at the time of the murder, Harper was already incarcerated for a murder out of Fort Bend County. Special Prosecutor Eric Quisenberry says, Harper has shown himself as one of the most calculating and violent offenders incarcerated in the TDCJ. His blatant and unmitigated lack of respect for life has demonstrated that he can never be allowed to leave confinement without posing a grave danger to public. Harper was incarcerated at Clements Unit in Amarillo after he was sentenced in 2014 to life in prison by a Fort Bend jury who convicted him of capital murder for fatally shooting his cousin, then fatally stabbing his cousin's pregnant girlfriend. Yeah, this guy's definitely a monster. See, these type of individuals that obviously killed their own family members and stuff, close friends like that, if you were to ask me, should never, ever have a cellmate. Harper's last capital murder charge stems from an investigation by the Region C of the Office of the Inspector General that began after the Clements officer found Nunez dead in his cell. He had visible injuries that he had been severely assaulted, according to the custodial death report. Investigators found signs of swelling cuts, bruises, and dry blood on his mouth, head, and facial area. Nunez appeared to have been dead for multiple days, the report states. Meanwhile, investigators spoke with Harper, who confessed to killing Nunez. who was serving a 10-year sentence after pleading guilty in 2016 in Harris County to a second-degree felony count of aggravated assault against a family member. An indictment states he stabbed his own mother. Wow, so I guess a lot of people would say this is prison justice. Whoever's mother got stabbed, he's probably loving reading this article. But at the same time, Harper's a monster as well, right? He killed his own cousin and his cousin's pregnant girlfriend. As Harper would say, they're both parasites, and if you're to ask me, needs to be cleansed. Now this is where it gets really wild, and like I said, the first thing that came to my mind was Home Alone. Harper says after killing Nunez, he admitted to moving his body around the cell and tied his limbs to a sheet so that he could pull it to make it appear that he was moving. He also changed his voice to pretend to be Nunez during roll call. Now without me telling y'all, what scene from Home Alone does this really remind you of? I'll give you a hint, a shower scene and a blow-up clown. I know, man, this episode's diabolical. Lace the comment section if you know exactly what I'm speaking of. But either way, this is the absolute most craziest thing I've ever heard. He even changed his voice during roll call, which is count time, right? Where the COs walk around and they count each cellmate to make sure nobody escaped. And typically, especially if I were to guess in Texas, where the rules could be a little stricter than others, you got to stand by your bunk. If you're not standing, man, they're going to stop count, go in the cell, and find out what's going on. So if I were to guess, dude had him tied up to where he was standing up, waving and everything, even disguising his voice to be Nunez. It's absolutely unbelievable to me. Dude's chilling in there with a dead body, sleeping, eating trays for days. But Quisenberry, the prosecutor, said on Wednesday that Harper told investigators after killing Nunez on Good Friday, wow, but his body was ultimately discovered that Monday, April the 13th, when the individual was scheduled for a doctor's visit. And what does Harper do? He tries to go to the medical visit as the dead inmate. But it says guards stopped him and discovered the murder when they went in to check on Nunez. Once again, it says Harper has shown himself as one of the most calculating and violent offenders incarcerated in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. He belongs in prison for life without the possibility of release, and we are grateful for the court's sentence. So I believe he got his second life without parole sentence. I mean, does he really care? Hell no, he don't care, man. What they need to do is put his ass under the prison for the rest of his life, man. No sunlight, no interaction with nobody. Just funnel him 3 trays a day and keep it moving. But that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Keep this story in mind for all you evildoers out there. Chances of you getting a cellmate like this, yeah, it could be slim to none, but there's still a chance. Like I said, if you don't commit no crimes, and no, it won't be, because you'll be free. Sleeping next to your old lady, kids, whatever, not that scary random cellmate. Anyways, I'm out of here. Stay tuned. I got plenty more content coming your way. If you're new to the channel and enjoyed, as always, hit that like, subscribe, notification bell before you leave. And more importantly than anything, y'all be easy, be safe, and stay free.